Life on the troopship below deck was very hard because although they'd no longer used hammocks, we had these bunk beds which were 5 high, and in very rough weather, if you were living on the bottom bunk and 4 of your colleagues above you were seasick, you can imagine what it was like catching it at the bottom. I never stayed below very long because I found it was even worse staying below. So I used to go up on top as much as I could, get a lot of fresh air. But I also used to play a lot of 3-card brag. And one of my famed claims is that we were the only school left going around the Bay of Biscay playing 3-card brag. Everybody else was below being sick, and we had such a big school and so much money on the table we didn't notice it was rough, so we carried on playing our 3-card brag until the storm was over. Another aspect, social life, is the regimental band used to play regularly in the bar at night, and we used to have great fun and games there because there was not a lot to do, although we did a lot of our room jobs, if you like, on the deck, organised by the ship's crew. We used to have to scrub the decks and do various things like that. We did exercises and all the other things that the officers tried to keep us occupied whilst they were, in between their social activities and mess nights. We also used to, at ports, we used to bring on board a man called the Gully Gully Man, particularly in Suez, where he was a magician, and I was fascinated how he used to take half-crown pieces off people in the audience and then just go to somebody's ear and produce a one-day-old chicken from the half-crown. It always used to fascinate me. Another pastime was that during the trip through the Suez Canal, the Walla Walla boats used to come alongside and throw up a big ball of raffia, which had a rope on the end and a basket in below, and in the basket were their electrical goods like watches and various things like that. And the ploy was the soldiers used to take the watch, throw the raffia bag back down and not put any money in the thing. And some of the incensed Walla Walla men used to manage to climb up and get on board, and on one occasion one of them was thrown overboard because they wouldn't give him his money. So it was quite an interesting. And as a young man in those days, I found that also very fascinating. I then was tasked to run the 432 heat trials in a place called Bir Fukum on the Little Aden Peninsula. And we were given these 2 prototype 432s, having never seen them and never driven them before. And we had to drive them for 10 hours a day in the desert. And I had 3 national service with me, and I've since caught up with one of them. And we drove, 2 of us drove for 5 hours in the morning, kept them running over at lunchtime, and the other 2 drove for 5 hours in the afternoon. And it was amazing. We went out on the salt flats for miles away from base with no telecommunications or anything. And I recall one time we broke down, and I was on my own. The other one was elsewhere. And I completely broke down, couldn't get the thing started. And I remember seeing an Aden Protective Levy patrol further back. So I grabbed my goatskin water bottle and marched back, following the tracks, back to where I'd seen this patrol. And I eventually found them in the desert. And there was 2 SAS men with them. And they organised 2 4-tonners to come and tow me and give me a bump start. And I got going again, but that was quite frightening, being on your own. Once we'd completed the heat trials on the vehicles, we then had troop trials, and we drove around in 135 in the shade, battened down with the troops in the back. The night before, we'd built 2 assault courses, identical, so that the boffins that were out testing the troop trials could monitor the performance of these people who'd driven around in these vehicles for 2 hours, battened down in the heat. We drove up, reversed up to where the 2 assault courses that we'd built the night before were, opened the doors, and the troops were running down this complete flat piece of sand, whooping and screaming and hollering, saying this is the easiest assault course we've ever been on, because the Arabs had stolen the whole lot, barbed wire and all. So it was quite an amusing incident. We had to stop the trials and rebuild and guard the assault courses overnight whilst we did the trials again.